talk about Jung. And I find that tremendously entertaining. I'm not sure I've ever read anyone as intelligent as Jung, except maybe Nietzsche. It's funny, he's accused of many things, such as starting a new religion, by some rather unscrupulous biographers. But what he did was actually far more radical than anything he's ever been accused of. One other thing I should tell you too is Jung has often been accused of anti-Semitism, but one of the things that came to light in last year was that he was working as an agent for the American government during World War II and frequently set updates on Hitler's psychological condition to the highest levels of the American government. He never told anyone.
Oh, space update.
So, you know, that's a little hard
Get
to
some.
accusations of anti-Semitism.
Get
which
some.
I never thought held any merit anyways. So, Jung. He was a strange guy in many ways. Extraordinarily imaginative. He could
I'm back.
get lost in daydreams and was a tremendously powerful visualizer. And a lot of what he discovered was a consequence of engaging in long-term, elaborated fantasies. And in these fantasies,
Where's this game? What the hell?
you have conversations with
Whoa,
figures
ho,
of
ho,
his
ho, ho, ho,
imagination
ho.
and communicate with them.
Completely different.
I had a client at one point who was a very prolific dreamer, and she could talk to her characters in her dreams and ask them what they meant symbolically, and they would tell her. That was really something. I've only seen one person who was capable of doing that. I don't know if it helped her that much in final analysis, but she could do it. Jung was very, very interested in
Sick.
the
And it's
depths of
animated.
imagination.
Oh,
His
hell yeah. Oh no, I gotta redo my character.
can be viewed as an amalgam of many things, but he had deep knowledge of Latin and Greek.
Hell yeah.
And he'd studied alchemical manuscripts for many, many years as an older man. So he was very interested in the emergence of the idea of science from what he considered the collective imagination. But in many ways, his primary modern intellectual influences, I would say, were Nietzsche
Begin blending.
and
So we got the same nose.
And
So let me change
Jung really set out,
a few things.
somewhat like Piaget, to address the gap
My
between
dad's
religion
white,
and science.
so that'll work.
But he did it for different reasons than Piaget. Jung took Nietzsche's comments about the death of God very seriously. And one of the things Nietzsche predicted at the end of the 19th century was that there were going to be two major consequences of the collapse of formal religious belief. He believed that that would lead people to a morally relativistic condition that would prove psychologically intolerable. Because if you adopt a morally relativistic position and you take it to its final conclusion, then everything is of equal value and there's no gradient between things. There's no better and there's no worse. And in the final analysis, you might say, well, there's no good and there's no evil. And the problem with that is you can't actually orient yourself in a world that has those problems.
Gotta put that Afro-con in there.
Act, as we've already
You know what I'm saying?
talked about with regards to the cybernetic models, you have to be aiming at something that's better than what you have now, or there's no reason to expend the energy. And so you need the gradient, you need a value differentiation in order to act. And Nietzsche's analysis was predicated on
Put
the
that
idea
blackness
that if
in
the
it.
value hierarchy collapsed,
Put that black. Oh,
not only
does
would
that
people
black.
not be motivated to do anything anymore,
Yeah.
but they would
hell
also be
yeah.
extraordinarily
Put that black in
confused
there.
and depressed because the value would go out of their life. And the consequence of that would be that they would become somewhat nihilistic, or maybe absolutely nihilistic, or that they would turn to ideological, rigid ideological systems as a replacement. Now, what Nietzsche offered as an alternative to that was that human beings could
That
create
nose is too
their
big,
own values.
but
And so his
you get the
idea
point.
was that the Superman, the Overman, depending on how you look at it, would be the person who was capable of transcending the valueless universe that the decline of religion had left with us, and creating their own values as a conscious act. The problem with that is that it isn't obvious that you can create your own values as a conscious act, because it's not obvious that values are consciously created. And I think this is why the psychoanalysts had so much to add to the philosophical debate, at least the philosophical debate that developed to the point of Nietzsche's observations. When Freud entered the scene, the idea of the unconscious was in the air, but Freud formalized it to a much greater degree than anyone else had. And Freud's theory really is deeply biological. It's biological, it's social as well, but his proposition that there's an id, is fundamentally the proposition that you're not necessarily, your consciousness, for sure, is not the master in its own house. Now, I think part of the reason that people like to go after Freud, there's a variety of reasons, but one of them is that modern people basically accept radical Freudian presuppositions more or less as givens now. And so if you're a brilliant thinker and your thought permeates a society to the point where your most radical propositions are accepted by everyone, all that's really left are your errors. And so it's easy to concentrate on Freud's errors because we've already digested everything he had to say that was particularly profound. I mean, I don't imagine, perhaps I'm wrong, but I don't imagine that there's anyone in this room to whom the news that many of your motivations aren't conscious comes as a surprise. I mean, even psychologists have admitted that in the last 20 years. I mean, they talk about the cognitive unconsciousness, which I think is a real sleight of hand maneuver to stop them from having to credit Freud with his discoveries. And I also think that Freud's notion of the unconscious is far more sophisticated than the cognitive scientist's notion, because Freud viewed the unconscious as a place that was basically populated by fragmented personalities, not cognitive schemes of one form or another, and not processes, but things that were like living beings. And you think, well, are there living beings in your unconscious? And the answer to that is, well, are you alive or not? And you're alive, so you're composed of living subcomponents, and they're not machines, or at least not in any way that we understand machines. They're fragmentary subpersonalities, and each of them have their own worldview and rationalizations and emotional structure and goals. And so that's why when you get hungry, you see the world through the eyes of a hungry person, and you think thoughts about food, and your emotional reactions depend on whether food is available or whether it isn't, and maybe whether or not the food you want is available and whether it isn't. And that's nature, so to speak, imposing its necessities on you as a living being. And for Freud, that was the id. And Freud thought of the id really as something that was primordial and primitive. And that's one of the things that really separated him from Jung. And I think Jung is much more accurate from the perspective of evolution.
All right, let's do this.
In fact, I think he's radically underestimated as a thinker whose thought was unbelievably deeply grounded in biology. Like, Jung was a remarkable person because his notion of history and the relationship between history and the human psyche covered spans of time that were really...
I don't think I need headphones.
Until modern historians and evolutionary psychologists started to talk about deep time.
Okay, so this is Star Citizen. This is probably one of the best examples of a simulation game on space.
Philosophers was like 500 to 2,000 years ago. And Jung
This game is a
way back farther.
12.
Started to take into serious account the fact that the origins of
I think this game's been in production for 12 years.
And that it's an emergent property.
Several $billion have been spent on this game to get it to where it is today. It's still in beta.
And Freud concentrated mostly on aggression and sexuality, and the reason he concentrated on those
Game's still in beta. It needs a lot of work. It's not perfect.
The reason he concentrated on those two primarily
It's just not perfect.
He regarded them necessarily as the most compelling of motivations,
But that's okay.
but he regarded those motivations as the ones that were most
You'll
difficult
appreciate the
for
artwork in this
most
game.
people to integrate
The artwork in
successfully
this game
into the
is
social world. So he thought
bar none phenomenal,
and
like
therefore
phenomenal.
underdeveloped and immature. And I think that's,
I mean,
I think that's a reasonable
the
proposition. I think
amount
modern
of
people have to add eating to that,
detail
because
that
since
went
the
into
time of
this
Freud,
game is
we've gone,
it's
I would
I
say,
can't even, the physics in it,
a high
bar
proportion
none.
sexually
Like
related
this
pathologies,
game crushes a
very,
lot of
very high
games,
proportion of eating
and I
pathologies, but
put other games on my computer, and I'm
so
always
that's one
comparing
part
it
of
to this
the
game.
Freudian unconscious,
And
sort of an
I'm going to
implicit
take you on a little journey
And then the other
in
part of
Star
the
Citizen.
Freudian unconscious is those things that have happened to you
And
that you've repressed because
hopefully you enjoy.
don't like
So,
what they
let's go.
imply. And you know, those are very different kinds of unconscious because one of them is dependent on your experience and the other
In the
isn't.
background,
You can
ooh,
think of
it's a little
Jung actually as
stuttery. In the
deep
background
archaeologist
playing
of the
is
id.
Jordan Peterson.
And Freud-
He's discussing
Freud thought
Freud
about it in
and
sort of primordial terms. So
Carl
his-
Jung.
his
All right, so this is
angry
really
kid would
choppy.
be, you know, like a beast that's out
It's
of
kind of
control.
weird.
But Jung
Let's see.
recognized
So this is the
the
city. This is
unconscious was far more sophisticated
Microtech.
in many ways than the conscious parts of your
I'll show you the
being.
character.
And
This is the character.
that it guided your adaptation in ways that you didn't understand.
That's supposed to
And that
be
those-
me.
The ways in which it guided
Looks
your
nothing like me,
adaptation
but
structured your understanding.
I try, right?
Universal,
Actually, we need to see
hence biological,
what I have
and
left of this character, because
far more
the
sophisticated.
game just
than a
updated. So
somewhat primordial
I need to
notion
make
of
sure I got all
biological
my
drive might
goods.
indicate.
So this is
So-
the suit I like to wear because
One of the
if
things
you
that
look,
might
this
consider, for
suit
example,
can handle up to
Jungian
negative
perspective.
40 Celsius. So
A lot of the forces
I
that
think those
ancient
are
people
really good
considered deities
stats, right?
were
Um,
personified representations of
these are the different helmets I have.
So here's a way of thinking.
I
about it.
personally
This
like
is
this
a way of
helmet,
thinking about the
which
notion
no
of
one
consciousness,
can.
which is
You can
Jung's-
only get this
in some
current
sense,
helmet
Jung's replacement term for
by
Freudian
certain
id.
promotions in the game. So I'm missing a helmet, and
So
that
Mars,
kind of
for
happens.
example,
That's like
is the
one of the
god of
bugs
war,
in the game
Roman god of war.
when you update.
And you might say, well, what does it mean for
I'm missing a lot of
there to
stuff.
be a god of war? And
but
the answer, or Venus is the god of love.
it's okay.
Actually, of sexual attraction.
It's
more
it's
particularly.
it's a beta game. It's in beta
Or of
mode,
sexual
so you
possession,
know there's gonna be
which is even a better way of thinking
some
about
bugs. Just the
it.
way
You
it
say, well,
goes.
why would people conceptualize of those
So I'm changing my clothes,
phenomena
if you can't tell.
as gods?
I like to be a little bit of a
Greeks said, for
nomad,
example, that human
right?
beings were the playthings of the gods. No, that's what Shakespeare.
So that's how he looks.
Shakespeare said that.
Oh. Yep, there we go. Give
well,
it a minute.
here's one way of thinking about it. What's older, you
And
or aggression?
I happen to like scarves.
The answer
So
to that is, well, you're 23.
that's my scarf. You like that?
And the system
Fashionable?
mediates biological
All right,
aggression.
let's go.
Mammals and their progenitors.
So we're gonna go to
Hence,
my hangar where I keep my ships because I want to see if I
you
lost my
think you
ships
control it
in the update.
rather than the other way around. You're deluded about your central nature. Part of it is that you don't control it at all. What happens is that you never go anywhere where you need to use it.
Oh yeah. So the game's
So
had some
one of the things that
updates.
happens to
You can
soldiers
see
in
some of
war
these.
grounds, for example, is they go
Like this is
somewhere where
different.
They could use it.
I guess you don't have contrast, so I'm not gonna really discuss it.
The consequence of its
Right.
emergence is so traumatic that they develop post-traumatic stress disorder because they observe themselves doing
This is
things
Microtech. This is
hyper-aggressive
my hotel,
that they could have never
or
imagined that someone
housing,
like them
if you
could
will.
have manifested.
These are the
Then you
AIs
think,
in the
well,
game.
What about Venus as a
That's all the
goddess?
AI
Well, if you fall in love with someone,
characters. They're all kind of just script,
is that a
right?
choice? It doesn't look like a choice. If it's a choice, it's often an
I might have to
incredibly
overclock my
self-destructive
GPU
and
because
idiotic choice.
it's
and
really
often one
choppy.
that ruins people's entire lives. It's more like a state of possession.
I mean, this game progresses so fast that I can't even keep my GPU up to speed. like
And it's
I
also
need like a
moral in
3080
some
to run
sense.
this game
So that's the
now.
reason why conceptualizing
But,
it as a deity makes sense. I mean,
Oh my gosh, it's so
The
choppy.
phenomena of
Ugh,
love,
it's like giving me a headache.
the manifestation of a complex
I'm not gonna overclock my
system will
GPU right
be
now
alone.
because that takes a little bit of work,
long after you
trial and
saw it.
error, and I just don't have time for that.
Before you showed up. And when it manifests itself, so to speak, within you, you're possessed by it. And you do its bidding. And you may do its bidding despite what you most deeply want. You know, modern...
All right, so this is the subway train. This is how I get to my ships.
Say, or let's say the more newly evolved
Hyperloop. Yeah, right. So,
what the
we'll see.
relationship is between
We shall see.
consciousness and the newly developed parts of the brain. The assumption is often made.
So if you see those lights in the background, that's the hangars. That's where all the ships are stored, all your vehicles.
But consciousness appears to be far older than that. So that's an erroneous assumption. But we do tend to believe that the most complex and sophisticated parts of our brain are the cortical cap, the complex cortical cap that's quite enlarged in human beings relative to our body size. Because it's the newest systems, and it's also part of the systems that allow us to do such things as communicate with language and think in abstract symbols. But there's a different way of thinking about this from a biological perspective, and that is, what makes you think the newest system is the most sophisticated one? Why don't you assume that the oldest system is the most sophisticated one? Because it's been around for, well, for example, the mechanism in your neurological...
So this is currently a PC game.
mechanism that underlies your conception
You cannot play this on any like gaming consoles,
for example,
and rightfully so, because gaming consoles just don't have
and the reason it's lasted
enough
300
RAM
years
and
is because it knows what it's
GPU
doing.
and processing. The game just requires. It's a
Parts of the
very
brain that make you conscious in the specifically human way.
how do I put it?
And
It's a
so
very
deeply embedded in your brain,
resource heavy
you have
game.
almost no
Like
voluntary control over it.
this is the
That's why,
detail.
for
Like
example,
let me
one
get
of
up
the
to
things that happens
the aluminum on the elevator. It's just
is that
right. There's so
the
much
system that
detail
reports their
that was
dominance-
put into this game.
dominance
Like I just
status,
can't emphasize enough the detail in this game.
reports that they're
like-
low.
The detail's
Now,
insane.
sometimes that's true because they're not depressed. They just have an awful life and they're actually at the bottom of the dominance hierarchy, and that's not the
If
same
you-
as being depressed.
I mean,
But
my
sometimes
reflections on that
neurofunctions, so
aluminum.
someone who's
If you notice
confident
that.
and well situated in life, and who
Like,
appears to
let's
have
see if I can
everything
show you a little
that
more.
person could possibly desire
Like,
in order to have
look at the
a
detail.
decent and meaningful and positive life.
Like
are
that's
still
crazy
catastrophically
detail.
depressed.
Like I
And what
mean,
seems to happen in those circumstances is that
look at the detail of this rock.
dominant
Like
founder,
the
for one reason or
moss.
another,
They put
is acting as if
moss
they're incredibly low
on a
status
rock.
when they're
Like
in
they
fact
thought of
not.
everything.
And I think
Like
that's
this
a good
game
definition of clinical depression.
is
I also
literally
think
a
part of the
piece of
reason that
art.
There's mixed
I mean,
results with regards to antidepressants.
I don't know what year this game takes place, but it's in the future. There's planets, there's star
How
systems.
could they? You're not depressed.
It's
You just
nerdy.
have
Yeah,
a
I get
terrible
it.
life.
Yeah, but
That is
I
not the
can't. I'm
same
addicted.
thing.
I can't help
And
it.
They need to be carefully distinguished because if you're unemployed and you're
Oh my
facing
gosh, it's so
the loss of your
choppy.
home and maybe your partner's going to leave you and your children hate you,
Like, I'm probably using
antidepressant
like
is very unlikely to fix that. Now, to
all
the
8
degree
cores
that
in my processor for this game. I'm
your
sure.
part caused by
Oh, I did an
impulsivity
update and it's just
and increased
really creeping.
aggression
All right,
and
so these are my
increased
ships.
mood because of your reaction to that circumstances is making it
There's a bug in the
worse.
game where
Then
I have
antidepressant
double
might help,
of my
and
ships. Like I
maybe
got
antidepressant will
double
help you
ships. It's super
regain
weird.
enough
I don't
cognitive
understand
control so
why.
you can plan your way out of the
But,
situation. But as a medication,
I'm gonna show you guys the Mercedes Benz of ships right here. This ship is
disintegrating circumstance.
phenomenal.
Whereas if your life is fine but you feel terrible,
All right, we're off to Hangar 14.
it's much more likely that
So I think the goal of my gameplay tonight is to get out of the star system. I don't really care for the star system because my goal in the game is to make money.
the level
and,
that's appropriate for your level of competence, which is really what you want.
It's not that easy making money here because of all the running around you have to do just to get to your hangar and
It's an unbelievably corrupt
all that fun stuff.
concept
So
in many ways because it's actually very, very
I usually
highly
pick a different star system so I can
neuroticism negatively.
jump out of my bed, go straight to my ship, make money, go back to my bed, and we're done. Because
Someone with low self-esteem
I'm just one of those people that don't have a whole lot of time. Wow, this is super choppy. All right, so this is my
It
ship.
isn't clear at all that calling that low
She's a beauty.
self-esteem has any utility whatsoever. But then you you also might have
This
yourself a
ship
harmless
I actually
substitute for
purchased
that.
with my own money out of my
Well,
own
that's a very
wallet,
complex
like
question, because you can clearly
pure
have
hard-earned
way too
cash.
much. That's what will make
You
a
don't have to
narcissist.
do that in this
So I
game,
would say your self-esteem
but I'm super impatient and I don't like to build money in the game. I just rather just
in which
get it
you're
over
held
with
by
and
members of
pay
your
for it.
society, your family and your society. because
So
they're judging
this
you,
current
at
ship
least in part, on your
is
competence.
it's a hacking ship.
You
Like you
shouldn't
can
think that you're more
you can
competent than you are, and
you can
shouldn't
actually
think that you're less competent
do
than you
data
are.
skimming with this ship,
Think that you're
and
as
you can
competent
smuggle.
as
It's a
you are.
smuggling ship
And
too.
sometimes that means you're not competent at all because you don't know what you're doing, and sometimes it means that you're
And the
quite
ship
competent.
happens to
Now,
come
I
with a
think it's
chessboard,
competence
which is
that
pretty interesting.
You should also
Well, this is my
regard
cargo bay.
yourself not only as
It's a
who
decent
you are,
size.
but as who you could be.
Let's work our
You know,
way
and
up
so if
to.
you're of
I
low
have to go straight to the
dominant
cockpit.
status,
I would show you guys the rest of the ship,
some
but
cities you guys are,
unfortunately everything's timed in the game.
you're starting your lives,
And if I stay
the fact that there's a lot of
in the
potential
D-dock hangar for too
that you
long,
still
the
are
ship will
able
be
to
put back in
manifest
storage, and I don't really want that.
tilt the
So,
self-assessment balance in your favor.
but this is my server room. It's actually the first thing we walk into,
Anyways, Jung was very interested in the depths of the psyche.
and all these servers are
Then the
functional. They're like
unconscious wasn't
it's a
a
simulation,
positive
so they're actually functioning
express
servers, like
experiences.
for whatever I
It
need
wasn't a
to hack
repository of
into or
underdeveloped
process or
interrogating
simulate.
biological
Like
systems.
these are actual
It was
functioning
instead
servers.
the
And
underlying
then
structure
this is my
of consciousness itself.
data
So Jung
scanning
believed that
chairs right
human
here.
experience,
But
as it's
I don't really have a whole lot of
consciously
time to show you that
was
stuff
structured
until I get out of
by underlying
I have to get out of the docking bay because it's timed.
patterns of behavior
So we're going straight to
that
cockpit.
were specific and unique to humankind, although shared to some degree.
So you actually fly the ships
And then
like
on top of that, a realm of imagistic and symbolic representation that in part
alright,
was
so we're in the ship. Okay, so we need to talk to command
like
literally like you have to talk to tower and get permission
we act in a human way.
to literally like
And
leave
we've been
spaceport.
acting in a human way for as long as there's been human beings. And we've been acting in a
Alright, so I got
mammalian way
clearance.
for as long as there's been mammals.
I'm gonna change view.
Now human beings are quite
I change views so I can see the hangar doors open because
we also watch ourselves.
you don't
act,
want to take
and we
off too
represent
soon,
those actions.
right? Or you're gonna
And
crash.
Jung believed that as a consequence
So that's my ship.
of
I paid for this ship with my own
us
money
manifesting
out of my pocket. I think I paid $300 for it.
specific set of
I know.
typically human behaviors
It's
over
really expensive.
hundreds of
The game,
thousands
like
or
some of these
perhaps
ships in this
millions of
game
years.
are
We also
$4,000.
evolved the cognitive apparatus
So this game isn't really for
representing
children.
those
This
patterns of
game's
behavior.
for
And
purists.
that cognitive apparatus
And-
expressed the representations of those
And my ship's not taking
fundamental
off.
patterns of behavior in
And it's in
imagistic
beta mode.
and symbolic form. And the
So there's some
basic
glitches,
imagistic
right?
and symbolic form is something like drama.
And kind of like if you run into issues with the game or something's not working properly,
Drama is the representation. The
my
abstract
job is
representation
to
of patterns
send
of
out emails to the company,
That's what you do when you go to a
the
movie. You
the
watch
builders and the
people
programmers to like
manifest
make
their
changes and
characteristic
fix
behaviors.
things.
And then you might note that there's characteristics.
it's all part of the development of the game. And I have no
quasi-unique
problem
patterns
helping
of
with
behavior
development
portrayed
in the game.
drama.
This
So,
is the
for
ship.
example, there's the bad guy.
It's-
and he
that's
wears
pretty
a black
badass.
hat in a cowboy movie. And whenever you go to
Let's
a
make
movie,
sure the bottom.
it's pretty clear to you right away who the good
The
guys
top.
are and bad guys are, and you accept the distinction between good and bad guys as an a priori acceptable distinction. So
Okay,
Jung would
let's
say,
go
well,
for a
that's
cruise.
the action of an archetype. What underlies that is
If
the
you see right
archetypal
here-
story of the hostile brothers. And the hostile brothers, for example, are Cain and Abel.
Some other players in the game.
The story of Cain and Abel in Genesis, by the
That's
way,
these little
is
like
really the second
up
story
arrows, but
that's in that origin.
enough of that.
And it's the first story about real human
So I'm
beings,
going to the next star system.
because Adam and Eve,
That's
so
where I
to
make money. I make money
by God,
in this
whereas Cain
particular
and
game.
Abel
There's
were
tons of
born
ways to make
first
money,
brothers. Well, what happened?
and how I
Well, one
make
of them
money in the
became
game
insanely jealous
is
of
I
the other and
trade.
murdered her.
So
That's a pretty harsh story when you think that
I buy something at a low price.
the
I take it to another star system
of the West,
where
roughly speaking,
it's a commodity. It's in high demand, and the price is very high to sell. And then that's how I make money.
forces operating
And there's
in the human psyche
tons of ways to
conceptualized
make money in the
as
game. You can
brothers who are murderously opposed to
you
one
can mine, you can be a pirate, you can steal,
That's
you
part
can
of the
sell
reason
drugs. I mean, you can do whatever you want in this game.
powerful. It's so
There's no
shocking.
script.
It's so
Like, you're
powerful, but it
completely
can't.
like autonomous and on
The
your
reason
own.
for that is that it's true, in a sense. It's true that a reasonable drama, not all of them obviously, but
I like to change views
portion of
just
them
for
has a
perspective.
bad guy and a good guy. And then you might say, well, what would the archetypes be? Well, the archetypes would be the ultimate good guy. And the
Like you
ultimate
can see,
bad
like
guy.
you can see
And there's
you're coming out of
representations
atmosphere. And a cool thing about the
ultimate
physics
good
in this
guy
game
and
is
ultimate bad guy. Jung was very influenced by
the
Christianity.
further out of the
Part
atmosphere you
reason for
get,
that is that he grew up in a state
the
of
gravity
Protestant
changes.
primary
So
prison,
the vehicle's
and a number of his
thrust
immediate
increases
ancestors were
because there's no
pastors.
gravity,
So he
which
grew
is
up in an
the
atmosphere
in
that was pretty
the.
saturated by religious
If you look over to the
ideas.
right
So a lot of his
middle
thinking was
screen, you see like the
influenced by
14, 9, whatever.
One of
That's
the
your
things he pointed
altitude.
out was that
And
just like Cain and Abel,
I
who are
think it's supposed to be pretty
archetypes of
accurate
archetypes
to
of
real
the
life
Old
altitude, but
Testament
some of
version
these
of
planets have
archetypes,
different,
hostile
they're different
brothers.
sizes, and
Christ
obviously
and
if a
Satan
planet's a
are
different
archetypes, and
size,
the
the
reason they're
gravity's
archetypes is
either
because
greater or
virtually
less,
by
right?
definition,
So
the satanic symbol, so to speak, is a representation, a symbolic representation.
I'm gonna
of
increase my
everything
velocity.
terrible about human beings.
so let me put in cruise control.
You can't imagine
And
anything worse
let's
than
pick a
that.
star
So
system.
it's like a limit case. And then when you go to a movie and you see bad guys, you can
If
think
you're
of them
interested in this
partial
game,
approximations of the archetype. Or you can think about them as
you have to make a pledge in order to receive the game. All right, so this is one of the bugs. I can't open up my star system. It's super buggy. Unfortunately, I can't open my star system, but there's workarounds. You just need experience. But pledge fees begin at I think $45, and the pledge fees can go from $45 up to a couple $100. So it can get pretty expensive. It is not a pay-to-play game,
Control
but if you're impatient like me,
the
it turns
influence
into
of
that.
the factors that underlie the negative archetype.
But I have no
archetype
problem
and to
supporting
manifest
developers in a game.
the factors
Not at
that
all.
underlie
A lot of people
the
don't
positive
understand
archetype.
that, but
And that's why you hope for the good guy.
they have families and
It's
need
also
to eat too,
why,
right?
generally speaking, in a drama, you
So I gotta
avoid
manually find the
good
star
guy
system I'm
while
looking
you're
for,
watching
so
the
that's
movie. So I can
what
give you an
this
example.
is.
One of the things I learned to do with my son when I took him to movies, when he was a little guy, I took him
And I don't know if I'm gonna be able to
fairly
find what I'm
intense
looking
movies.
for, because
And,
this way is terrible.
sometimes too intense, but
So I'm looking for like
one of the things I
CRU
taught him when he was afraid was keep your eye on the
L5
hero.
or
Not
Levski
don't be afraid or it's
or
not
Her.
real.
Is it
It's like,
Hurston?
you could
No,
easily make a case
Delmar.
that the movie is
It's called
more real than
Delmar.
normal life.
The learning curve in this game is massive. Like,
What
oh, there's
a
her
movie
L5
is
right there.
normal life stripped of everything that's
All right, so we're gonna go to Hurl R5. I'm
So
not
if it's
sure if
stripped
this is
a
gonna
representation of
work.
everything that's trivial, what makes you think that isn't more
Oh,
real?
come on, come on, come on.
So is fiction more real than
Oh,
life?
crap.
Well, is abstraction more real than reality? It certainly is in many cases. I mean, there are people. who
Okay,
believe, for
so
example,
I like Hurl
that
R5 and I like
representations are
a planet called
the most
Delmar.
real.
Hurl R5 is not a planet.
Certainly, if you're a very powerful mathematician, you certainly
Hurl R5 is actually like a satellite station that orbits
certainly gives you
a
a tremendous
planet.
amount of control over your
But I
environment.
can do some really
So
good
the idea
trade
that
deals there.
abstractions aren't real,
So,
that's a silly idea. And the idea that fiction isn't real,
pretty phenomenal.
all that indicates is a confusion about what constitutes real. A movie is a representation of characteristic behavioral patterns extending across time. And it can be a more or less useful and accurate distillation of those representations. And generally what we assume is that the greater the fictional representation, because we make a distinction between great fictional representations and second-rate fictional representations. So Shakespeare, for example, is a master at exploring the contours of the archetype in a complex, realistic, and useful manner.
So this is how it looks when you jump star systems with your quantum drive.
behavioral patterns of human beings.
This is probably a better view of the ship.
And then we evolved a system of representation.
It's a non-symmetrical design,
that would
as you
enable
can
us
see.
to understand the patterns in a way that other animals can't, because we're self-conscious.
But it's a data recovery
So what does it mean to be self-conscious? It doesn't
unit.
just mean that you know that you exist as a separate
It's not.
entity. It's not just a state
The
of
ship's not great for
consciousness.
battles or
It's a
anything,
knowledge condition.
but it's
You
got
have
really great
at your
shields,
fingertips
and that's kind of why I like
very
it so much.
large representational storehouse
And it was just
of
released.
abstract knowledge about what human
And I
beings
kind of
are
like how they
And
did
that's
like this
developed over
external
tens of thousands
like
of years,
engine
and it's a collective activity. The generation of all these
in the
stories
back.
we tell about each
I
other.
like little
I mean,
tiny
we have
things like
ancient
that.
Stories. The oldest stories we have, by the way, are Mesopotamian stories, as far as I know. And the oldest
That's pretty cool.
Mesopotamian story, or one of the oldest Mesopotamian stories we have,
Not
is
really sure why they make the
Pharaoh
ships
story.
aerodynamic, because
The god
there's
Marduk
really no point in space for
fights
making
a
things
great
aerodynamic.
dragon
But maybe
and
the
cuts
reason
her
why
into
it's
pieces and
aerodynamic
makes
is
the world.
because some of these
You might
planets
think,
do have some kind of atmosphere, so maybe that's probably one of the
Might
reasons.
be the world's created out of the pieces of a great dragon. Well, it's a Piagetian idea with a bit of narrative complexity added to it. It's like,
I mean, who knows?
well, how do you create the world? Well, you confront the unknown, and you transform it into the known, or you confront unexplored territory.
I guess it's
and
got
you
it's somewhat of a
transform it into
gunship.
explored
It looks like it's
territory.
got
And then you might say, well,
a turret in the
what
bottom, a
exactly
turret on the
is
top.
unknown, or what exactly
I think
is
it has
unexplored
some kind.
territory?
Oh,
And
it's got a turret in the
scientist
front
would say,
too.
well, if you walk out in a field
So
that you've never been in before,
in gameplay, you can
soil
have
and
friends
material
join
elements, and that's what's
in
really
and the
there.
same server and jump on the ship with you and control the turrets in
But
case
that
you get
isn't
into like
exactly
battles
what's
or
really there.
what have you.
Depends on your time frame.
There is
So one of
software
the
you can
things I would say
download
about
into
that,
your
for
ship
example, is that
to
if you
where
wander outside the boundaries of your
the
knowledge,
turrets have like AI and they can.
if you wandered
can
outside
kind
the
of
boundaries of your territory
assist.
when you were an animal,
I don't know how to do that yet in
or
the game.
when you were a more
I'm
archaic
just not that
human being,
advanced enough yet.
probability
And I've only
that you
been
were
playing
gonna
this
run into
game
something
maybe
that was
4
gonna
months.
tear you apart and eat you
So
was
it's
extremely
a
high.
huge learning curve of a game.
And so then I could say, well,
but
the fundamental nature of the unknown is that
it's
which
really
tears you
great.
apart and eats you. And you might think, well,
let's see where we're at. So we're about 34 million kilometers from our destination.
you know how you hear evolutionary
And your
say, well, it's
destinations
lots of
are
times about the
not
fact
necessarily
that
real time,
we
but
evolved on the
it's
African
time.
continent, now
Like
our nervous systems are sort of
some of the biggest jumps can
for
take
that
about 10
primordial
minutes.
environment
And
and
like you're
operating
literally
modern
just sitting here waiting
So there's
as
a
you go
mismatch
through
between
Quantum
us and
Drive.
the modern world. It's like
A
5.5
lot of
that's
people
an
like
absolute
complain about that,
theory,
but
partly because we didn't
it's a
just
simulator. It's simulating
evolve, been evolving
what
for a
life
very
would be
long time,
like in the
spend a lot
future
more time in trees, for
if you could
example,
actually jump star systems with Quantum Drive.
While we
So
were spending
you
time
know,
in trees, a lot of us were eaten by snakes.
it is what
for
it is,
example.
right?
So that's another reason why the unknown itself is represented as this terrible, predatory, reptilian beast. And then the human being is represented as that which, or the conscious element of the human being, which was represented by the Mesopotamians.
I know the
as a
game's
god,
a pretty
highest god,
hefty
actually, in the
price
hierarchy
tag
of gods, which was a
for
brilliant
your
Mesopotamian realization.
to
The
pledge.
Mesopotamians basically
But I mean, where else are you gonna get
drama,
a simulated
religious
game
drama.
where
The
like
highest faculty of the human being was the capacity
where else are you gonna get a
to
simulation
tend
of
to the
space?
unknown
Nowhere.
and to make something
All you
new
can
of
do
it.
is just watch YouTube
Well,
videos of
that's what Piagetian idea.
SpaceX or
Exactly
Blue
what Piaget was
Origin
talking
or
about when he talked about the necessity of comprehending
whatever,
knowledge
or
as a
Firefly, like
process
all these
rather
different
than as
companies. Like
collection.
you're never gonna have like
It's a process,
in-seat
it's a
experience like
process.
maybe some
Confront what you don't
astronauts will
understand.
have.
Boldly
And in this
go where
game,
no one has ever gone,
like
right?
you're like
I mean, Star Trek,
completely in the game, and
systematizing
you could
minds,
pick
bigger
your ratio of
mythology.
view too, right?
It's rife with mythology, and its initial statement
I don't know.
is a mythological statement, and it's a
I'm such a
statement of
huge
the
fan of this
eternal
game.
explorer. And that's an archetypal idea. You know, you might say, well,
I think it's a
are you
very
still threatened
beautiful
by
game.
those
I think
terrible
it's
things that
very
your
well done,
ancestors on the Veld?
and I really can't stress enough the detail.
That's because
Like
they don't
look
get the categories
look
right.
at the detail.
Lion is a subcategory
And all this
of
is
unknown
functioning. Like
horrible
all
things.
these buttons
And
function.
you guys
Like
are
everything
surrounded
is
by unknown
functional
horrible
in this
things,
game.
just like people have always been surrounded by unknown horrible things.
And
So,
like
because you're just
whoever
as
was on the
prone to
design team,
disease,
like I was aircrafts for a long time, and
fundamentally
I've spent a lot of time in
finite
aircraft
being,
cockpits,
and there's
especially
things
fighter
everywhere
jets.
that act
and like some of this stuff is really
and
accurate.
you will die.
So I think some of
So the
a
idea
lot of this
that the
attention to
material
detail,
conditions
like
of
there
the
was a
environment
lot
have
of
changed in a qualitative manner since the
research and
consciousness
development to
developed.
create a lot of this.
It's an
Like,
error of category.
look how the light is shining off
Mythological
the
categories
Kevlar of the
are
gloves.
categories that represent
There's
environmental
wrinkles in the
entities
gloves
which are
that
social, that have existed for vast
reproduce
stretches
the
of time,
idea
and which
of
exceed our capacity to
in-service
connect with our
use.
senses.
Like
So
nobody
one
thinks of that.
representation,
Nobody.
for example, is
Like, look at the
great
texture.
father,
Look
or
at the
wise
texture.
old man.
Like,
And the wise
there's
old man is a
texture.
great
There's
father,
actual
is fundamentally
texture.
a
The
representation of
shadowing.
dominance
The
hierarchy. Now the problem with the dominance hierarchy is
composites.
you can't see it, but it's there. It's really there. And then
Look at this.
figures
There's a
like the Great
sticker
Mother,
right here.
especially the tarot, because
I don't know if I can
most
zoom
of
in
the
on it.
archetypal figures come in
Look,
pairs,
there's a
a
sticker
positive
right here.
element and a
Right
negative
here.
element, and that's
There's a sticker.
because virtually everything that manifests itself to you in a
That's
complex
insane to me.
environment
Like that
is
kind of
one
detail,
being
that's
takes
insane.
with one hand and gives with the other.
Look, it's even got like
Nature is
serial number
benevolent and
badges.
kind and
It's
wise
got part
and
number
source of
badges.
all new knowledge,
Like,
and also cancer,
they thought of
malarial
everything.
mosquitoes and the tsetse fly and the guinea worm and all these things that are
I don't know.
horrifying
I
and
think
destructive
that's
beyond belief.
just
We covered
phenomenal.
both, and then society
Actually, while we're waiting,
this before.
because we're
That's
still
the
17 million
father.
kilometers
So on one
away,
hand, here you are,
maybe I can show you the rest of the
protected
ship.
by your social surround. On the other hand, social structures tend towards tyranny and authoritarianism, and they oppress the
going on?
individuals within them at the same time that they sustain their development. And so that's a dichotomous archetype. And then there's the individual who's, on the one hand, a remarkable and wonderful creature, and on the other hand, someone who's capable of atrocities like those that characterized
These are the problems with
millions
beta.
of people in the 20th century. Those are all archetypes.
Uh-oh.
There are more archetypes than that. The archetype of the
All right, yeah,
predatory
it's in beta.
reptile
I kind of messed
with
up a little
something
bit.
to offer, which is
Let me see if I can fix
essentially
it.
prey, is the most fundamental archetypal representation. Jung found that representation. In
I
the
accidentally
heaven
shut my ship down in the middle of a
world,
quantum
which is a snake
drive,
eats its own
which
tail. And it's a symbol
not
of
the brightest thing to
matter
do.
and spirit in union.
It's an
because
accident.
The snake is sort of matter, and the wings on the snake,
Let's see if I can
dragon, make it spirit.
correct
So
this.
it's like the fundamental elements of reality are matter and spirit in some kind
I'm
of
overheating, so I gotta wait
joined,
for it to cool down.
state. And the fundamental task of the human being is to come to terms with the nature of that unknown thing. Now,
think I messed
think
up.
about it this way. Well, why would ancient people represent the unknown as such, as a reptilian, self-contained reptilian form that was both spiritual and material? Well, here's the reason. First, the unknown's dangerous.
Let's see if I can fix this problem I just got
You
myself
could be
into.
its prey.
Oh, the map's working.
So you better have that representation.
This is the map.
And then you might ask, well, is that really
And
the
actually,
And then I would say,
Hurl
well,
L5 is not where I
absolutely
want
what
to
you
be.
mean
I
by
want to
reading.
be
From a Darwinian perspective, that was
Delmar.
the best
That's where I
way
want to go.
conceptualize the
That's where you
unknown.
can do your best trading.
And then you might say, well, that doesn't make it real. And then I
Okay.
might say, are you sure about that? Is there anything more real than representations derived from Darwinian processes? The Darwinists would say no. Okay, so why is it matter and spirit?
That is
Why
weird.
is it winged and on the ground at the same time? Well,
Oh,
this
there we
is,
go.
you can also understand this from a Piagetian perspective. And
I'll
so
show you the
that
ship
is
again.
because when you encounter the unknown, you
Look at
separate
space. Like,
the
look how
material world and the
space is
spiritual world.
represented.
And the
It's
spiritual world is the
represented like
psychological world.
really
So what
accurately.
you're doing when you encounter the unknown is you
Like
parse some
all
of
the
it up
star
into the
systems.
world,
It's just,
and you
it's
incorporate
just
other elements
such a
of it into
beautiful
yourself.
game. I just can't.
And the best way to think about that, I think,
can't
from a
stress that
conceptual
enough, how
perspective,
beautiful this
becomes
game
more
is.
understandable, is that what you encounter when you encounter
All right, we're on a new
the unknown
destination
is
because the original
patterned
destination I had
information.
was incorrect. This is
And
the
you
destination I
take some of that
wanted.
patterned information
The
into
reason why the
yourself,
original
even by
destination
doing
is
something as
incorrect
simple as
is
gripping something
because
onto
my
the
star
ground,
map wasn't
because
working.
You're imitating the pattern
And the game's still in
thing
beta.
you wanna pick
And
up.
because it's in
And
beta,
that's how you're transforming
you're gonna run into
its
bugs.
structure into an element of your being.
All the
So
bugs I
you're
find, I have to
unknown,
report those bugs
constructing this
eventually.
idea. You're
But
simultaneously constructing
in the interim,
and constructing yourself. And thus, the inference is the unknown is
I guess
made
that's not
out
gonna
of
happen.
that which can be parsed
I was
out
gonna
into
get out of the
psyche
cockpit and show you the
matter.
ship, but
And it's dangerous. So it's perfectly reasonable.
Oh, it's working.
representation. And that's
Perfect.
why it won't go away. So Jung's fundamental contribution, I would say,
It's working, so I can show you the ship
is
now.
his analysis of hero mythology. And I would say that's the fundamental.
I have my interlock
thing.
system
Now, the
sensor
relationship
set
between that and
to
Nietzsche is
notice
fundamentally this.
my
Nietzsche
body.
believed that once the religious system
So I'll show you
collapsed,
habitation.
consciously
This is
produce
the
our new set of
habitation
values. But Jung believed
quarter of the
that
ship.
the psyche was the source of all value.
This is
And
data.
so that it wasn't a matter of creating
More
new
data.
values. It was a matter of discovering
I have
the
some
values
weights
that were already
to work
lying
out.
dormant and implicit
I got a
within
couple
us.
sleeping quarters here for
So,
like any of my
and the
friends
next
that need a
thing I would
place
say
to
about
crash.
You all know this. You just don't know you know it. And so one of the reasons to be
Storage.
educated from a literary and historical perspective is that you can
The
come to
sensors aren't
understand
perfect.
what you already know. Because if you don't understand,
Here's my
then there's an element of your being,
my little chill
the element
room.
that knows it and acts it out.
Got a little
And
couch.
there's another element which is sort of you as a
A
personality.
functioning chess
completely
game.
at odds with one
Like
another.
you can
And that
literally
makes you weak.
functionally play
It makes you something that's divided within
the
itself.
chessboard.
Now, you're doing everything you can as a general rule to incorporate this information. Now, for a long time, it seems as if as long as we acted it out and represented it symbolically and didn't argue about the assumptions, it was
This
more
part of the game
or
doesn't always
less
work
okay.
perfectly.
But we're past that now.
But if I can
In
get
order
this
for
to work,
us to
it's glitchy. I know.
benefit from
It's
the
beta
same
though. Gotta remember that.
protective
Come on, you can do it. You can do it. You can do it.
structures that our ancestors benefited from, we now have to understand what they mean consciously.
I
And
have.
that's really
There's
what
a.
Jung was up to. What he was really
Come on.
trying to do was to
Come on.
resurrect deep religious representations.
There's an
from the
Easter egg
dead,
in this
so to
game.
speak,
I'm trying to show
and
you
to
it,
make them
but
conscious so people could align
it's not
themselves with them again.
working. Ugh.
Now,
It's
I'm
not
gonna
working.
show you something that's related.
Oh well. Oh well. Maybe next time. Alright, I showed you habitation. Let's go to the servers.
All right, now, so I'm going to show you something from Pinocchio.
I showed you the servers earlier. You
Now,
guys
this
kind of
is an
saw that.
initiation ritual.
Here's a scanning room.
Journey to the depths.
This is where you collect the data. So you can jump in this chair and you can scan for data. And then everything is saved on these systems
Disintegration
in
of
the
that
actual ship.
previous personality into a chaotic state prior to rebirth.
What
Now,
else
what
is on the
happened
ship?
to Pinocchio, which by the way was released at about the same time that World War II was brewing, and which also contains one of the
It's a
best
very
representations
time-consuming game because it is a simulator. So,
of the individual motivations for
and
fascism that
it's
I've
a
ever seen
very
any associated
GPU-heavy
with
game, like
Pleasure Island.
because
Remember,
it's seamless gameplay.
the puppet is trying to
So,
become a real boy, right? So he's a marionette to begin with. Something
in
else is
traditional
pulling his
games,
strings.
like you'll
Well, for
get
you,
to certain
that's
stages in the
pure
game and then it loads.
state of being.
But the way
Something else
this
is
game
pulling your
works
strings.
is it
Even the idea
loads.
that you're autonomous is the
It
consequence of
loads
something else
as
pulling
your
your
character
strings.
moves
For
through
you,
it. So it's like this
what you
seamless
need to do is
simulation.
find out exactly
Like it doesn't
who
load.
and what is
It's
pulling your
constantly
strings
loading,
and
like
decide
in
if
real
that's
time.
the direction in which you want to
And
go.
the game's
And
just
that's really
very
what happens
resource
in
heavy.
Pinocchio.
Like you need a really good computer to run
In
this
the
game.
Pinocchio story, he starts out as a marionette.
And my computer's
Now,
pretty
he's a
stout and
marionette
it can
made by
barely
a
run
good
this game.
father, because Geppetto was a good father,
And-
was a good craftsman, and so on.
come
So
on, come on, come
he's
on.
a marionette with a benevolent puppeteer. But as
I
soon
have a
as he develops
3080
autonomy,
GPU,
then he becomes
and
prey
I can run the game in ultra.
forces that are elements of the
This
demonic
current
archetype.
system right here is it's
Worst
a
bad guy
20
in the
to
entire movie
2080
turns
Super,
into
I
Satan
believe.
himself at one point in the
So
movie.
it's
Basically,
barely
he has
enough.
horns and a bright red face, and he manifests himself
But,
as so terrifying that
it-
coyote,
It's well above minimum requirements. So
wolf, fox, and the cat that are trying to corrupt
the
Pinocchio are
attention to
terrifying
detail,
because
I
they
just
get
can't
like they're
emphasize
criminals, they're
it
petty criminals,
enough.
deceptive, and so forth. But when they get a look at who's pulling their strings, it's enough to terrify them. And so Pinocchio goes through a series of temptations of various sorts, including a Freudian
Okay, so
temptation.
how far are we?
Freudian
All right, so we're about
temptation is
3
to remain
million
weak and
kilometers.
sickly instead of
We're
becoming
pretty
a real
close
person.
now.
So it's an eatable problem. And another problem that faces Pinocchio is that he's offered false celebrity as a way of solving his life's problems. So he's offered the opportunity to become an actor. And what that means is a deceitful fake who's constructed a persona that makes him appear far more valuable than he really is. So the movie outlines two pathological modes of movement towards maturity, one being a phony and the other taking the easy way out and hyper valuing all your pathology so that you become dependent.
It looks like we're nearing the destination.
And then another mode of
just several thousand kilometers away
to Pinocchio, which is to do nothing but engage in short-term impulsive and destructive play.
Okay, we made it.
Pleasure Island, but when he
We're at
when he
Delmar.
goes to Pleasure Island, he finds that it's actually ruled by demonic
Ship's
forces,
overheated, so we're waiting for the coolant systems to do their job.
who are transforming all the pleasure-seeking marionettes
So this
to
particular
brave
system
donkeys
has
who are slaves.
all kinds of stuff going on.
So Pinocchio escapes from that, and he does it basically by jumping into
Look
the
at all these
unknown, and
asteroids.
that's where
It's like
we're
a
going
whole
to start
asteroid
our
field.
exposure to his initiation.
You can actually fly up to, not fly, but you can actually head towards these asteroids and like look at them in detail. Okay, so I'm looking for Levski. This is Levski.
Okay, so now you can imagine what's happened. So he's on Pleasure Island, and everything went to hell, fundamentally. And so he jumped into the water to escape from that, and that's equivalent to plunging into chaos. And so chaos was an escape from.
And the cool thing about this game is like
pathological
every
tyranny. And
aspect
now he's tried to go
of
home.
the
So
planet
this is the
is
psyche
to scale.
in its search for maturation.
Like everything you
Cleanses
see
the
is to scale.
which is
So
the
like
tyrannical element
the
of brain
closer I
that
fly
Arrow
in,
coped with, and it trots home,
the ratios are
runs
to
home
scale.
defeat.
And
Typical part of a hero story is the initial defeat of the hero when he
that's crazy detail.
encounters usually either
That's crazy
the terrible
detail.
great father or the terrible great mother. So this is a retrogressive. Jung would call this retrogressive restoration of the persona. So it's sort of like maybe you're a well-adapted adolescent and you live at home and you're a happy adolescent.
Okay, I'm flying way too
Then you
fast.
go out to try to be an adult.
Let me
and
slow
you
it
fail,
down.
And then when you come back home, you
This
try
little
to
trick
act
I
like
learned.
a happy adolescent again, but you're not. What you are, in fact, is an unhappy adult. And if you move back to the happy adolescent mode of being, then it's false and pathological. You can't go home again. Another typical motif in literature. Now the cricket.
I just blew up.
I can't tell you everything about this story. I can tell you a
I
couple
came
of
in too
strange
hot.
things about
That's
it.
my
One
bad.
is that the cricket is Jiminy cricket.
I haven't played in a while.
Jiminy cricket or JC. And Jiminy cricket
Oh, that's
is a
frustrating.
common Southern American mild form of
Anyways,
cursing. It's the equivalent of Jesus Christ.
I'm not going back.
And so you might think, and
I think I'm gonna shut down the gameplay.
the cricket is Pinocchio's
'Cause
conscience.
I think I just spent an hour just getting to that star system, and that's what I mean. The game's very time consuming, and it's because it's a simulation.
Applied to a
Oh,
cricket.
man, it's so
He's guiding a
frustrating.
puppet into
Crap.
the water to rescue his
I came in
father
way
from
too
a
hot.
whale.
I didn't
Why would any of
realize
that happen? And
I had
answer
the
to that
throttle
is,
up on the ship.
you know
That's
why, but you
really my
can't
bad.
say
But
why.
whatever.
You can't say
I can always go back.
why you know or what
But
it
that
is.
Star Citizen,
But the mere
it's a
fact
space
that it makes
simulator.
sense, and it does, is an indication from a
It
Jungian
takes
perspective that you're
place at
operating
some
at an
point
artificial level.
really
You
far in the
understand
future.
this. And so I can say, here's an
And
example of why the cricket
hopefully
is
you
bugged,
guys might have the
Things
same
bug
passion
me,
for it that I do.
right? We say that.
I think
things
it's a
bug
very
me.
phenomenal
Well, you should do
game.
something about
Um,
the things that bug you.
and for me, it's just the
That's your
detail.
conscience calling
Like
to
the
you.
detail.
It's
that's went
destiny
into
in
this.
some
Like,
sense,
it's just
manifesting itself
crazy
as an
detail.
unconscious impulse. That really bugs me. Means if you can, you should do something about it. Because you think
I
about
just
it,
can't get over the
there's a lot of
detail.
things out there that might bug you, but lots of them don't. But some of them do. Well, why do those bug
The
you?
thing about the
not the
detail
other
in
things.
this, it's like,
Well,
at what point?
That's a complicated question, but one potential answer to it
At
is that
what point
there's
does
part
the
of your psyche that's
contrast
oriented
of
towards further
game
development. Jung
detail
would call that the
separate
self.
itself from
And that's
reality?
like the totality of everything that you could
Like, at
be.
what point,
And
you know? Like,
it's
this game's like a
it's
really good
it's a strange
example
sort
of that.
entity in some sense because it's partly potential, and it's
And there's
potential
going to
that
be a
spans
day
time.
where
But the
you're
way
not
that
going to be
your
able to
potential
differentiate
totality
between
calls to you in the
the
present
real world
is
and the
by
simulated
placing
one.
things in front of you
And I
that
think
are
this
your
game
problem.
is on the
And they announce themselves
the
as your
forefront
problem.
of that,
And they do that by bothering
hands
you.
down. And that's
So
why I'm
then
a
if
big
you
supporter
pick up
of it.
the task of fixing the things that
So hopefully you
bothers
liked
you,
what I
then
showed you.
find the
It's not for
pathway
everybody.
to
It's in
further
beta.
expansion of
It's
your
buggy.
personality.
It's super buggy. It crashes a
So, and
lot.
that's what's happening with Pinocchio. One
But
of the things that's really interesting
it's people
about
like
Pinocchio
me that
that makes it
keep this
incredibly
game
sophisticated
supported,
is that
and I
despite
think
the fact that the
so
cricket,
far this
who
game's
is a
12 years
avatar
old,
of
and it's just a
Christ, is so to
constant
speak.
evolving
The cricket has
organism,
things to learn just like
and
Pinocchio.
I just love it
And so
to
that's
death.
very cool because
So
it's so cool, it's so sophisticated.
Yeah,
because
enjoy.
You do have a conscience
Star
that
Citizen.
guides you. But until you establish a dialogue with it, both you and the conscience are immature.
super great game.
You have to establish a conscious dialogue with it, and then interact